All right, ladies and gentlemen, is that time of year. Week one of the NFL season is kicking off Thursday night between the Ravens and the Chiefs, which means week one of the 2024 fantasy football season is starting this week as well. And we are going to have you covered with everything you need to take home a victory in week one, as well as the entire year to bring home a championship trophy. And that means here in week one, we are here for you guys who still play with defensive special team slots in your leagues. We are breaking down the week one must start defenses and streams. And for the most part in this video, I'm going over streaming options, which I think is important in week one because when we break down things, there are a lot of major defenses from last year who have tough opponents in week one. You've got the Ravens and Chiefs kicking things off right away in Thursday night. Like I mentioned, tough to really want to start either of those teams. Packers and Eagles on Friday night. That kind of takes away two options there. You got the Bills at home against the Cardinals. Nothing really feels good there if you drafted the Bills, and I think most people expect them to be a weaker defense this year anyways. Steelers are at the Falcons, so that's kind of a mixed up matchup there as well. The Falcons have improved in the offseason. The Steelers probably got drafted, but are you going to start them on the road? And the big one to end week one, you've got the Jets at the Niners. Those are probably the two highest drafted defenses, and I don't think you're going to feel comfortable starting either of those against these respective offenses. So it's a very unique week, tough week in terms of streaming options, but I think I got 7 good opportunities for you guys to go out on the waiver wire and take a look at and help you guys get that victory in week one. If you guys have any fantasy questions, be sure to drop them down below. Redraft Dynasty, Best Ball, week one, waivers, trades, starts, sits, whatever it may be, drop them down below. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can, but let's not waste any more time. Let's hop right into our week one must start defenses. All right, first on the list, we are going to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals at home versus the New England Patriots. This is obviously a defensive stream that's been building more buzz in the past week or so, post drafts or just in general on the waiver wire, but they still set at just 17% rostered, so an easily attainable team. And yeah, I mean, when you look at things last year, they were not the best bunch in terms of fantasy scoring defenses. They were 20th overall, 11 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, 17 interceptions, and just 1 touchdown for this group, 44 total sacks. So not like awful, but they still ranked 20th overall. Not great. When we break things down, they gave you double digits 1, 2, 3, just 4 times on the year, but they get the luxury of going up against Jacoby Brissett this week at quarterback, as well as what is expected to be probably the worst offense in the entire NFL and the New England Patriots. So at home, I definitely like this play. They're a team that you can go out and pick up on the waiver wire, sitting at just 17% rostered on the Sleeper app at the moment. And at the end of the day, just a solid streaming option because they get to go up against arguably the worst starting quarterback in the league in week one in Jacoby Brissett. No offense, Jacoby. I mean, we're fans of the brisket here, but I'm not really looking forward to this offensive play from the Patriots in week one. So look at the wide receivers for the Patriots. Not going to be great this week. Ramondre Stevenson can maybe muster something. Like I said, this Bengals defense, not even really that great on paper, but it's just too good of an opportunity. The streaming upside is there. I say go out and grab them. They're definitely worth a play in week one. All right, next up, we've got the Seahawks at home versus the Denver Broncos. This is another play that I like because you're looking at another offensive unit that is just not going to be top tier in the Denver Broncos. Plus, the Seahawks are at home, which I like when I'm looking at streaming options at defense. And I mean, the Seahawks sitting at 43% rostered on the Sleeper app. So I think that's reflective of the fact that they will be facing a rookie quarterback in Bo Nix in week one and that they are playing from home. So this is another unit not great last year in fantasy, 24th overall, 12 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, 11 interceptions, 3 touchdowns, 47 sacks. I mean, not awful, but they just didn't have a ton of fantasy points scored. You got double digits 1, 2, 3 times out of the Seahawks. So actually ranking worse than the Cincinnati Bengals, who we just talked about. But still, this is a good play this week. We're not going to get a major amount of upside out of Bo Nix in his first NFL start. I know he looked pretty good in preseason, but those were not NFL starters out there. And It's just, by nature, you're going to see these rookie quarterbacks make mistakes probably early for the most part, if not often. So, listen, I'm not out on Bo Nix, not like trashing Bo Nix. I think in week one, this is a good opportunity for the Seahawks to come out, stand their ground at home, put up a good defensive front against a rookie quarterback. I think everything is here for the Seattle Seahawks to come out, maybe not with a major ceiling in terms of streaming in week one, but a good defensive effort that gets you through the week. Next up, we've got the New Orleans Saints. This is the first team on the list that probably got drafted in your league, or at least has the best opportunity to get drafted in your league. May not be out there on the waiver wire, sitting at 61% rostered. And I mean, this was a okay unit last year in fantasy football, 13th overall. You got double digits out of them just 4 times on the season, though. They were kind of like, they would fluctuate. Like, they'd have a good week, then they'd have a week where they gave you 0 points and you just couldn't really trust them. But 9 forced fumbles, 10 fumble recoveries, 18 interceptions, 2 touchdowns, 34 sacks for the Saints defense last year. And I do believe personally that the Panthers are going to be an improved offense this year under Dave Canales. If you guys have followed the channel throughout the offseason, you've heard me talk about that. I do think Bryce Young will be better this year. I don't know if he's going to be a quarterback that we can just stream against on a week in, week out basis, but this is a home game for the Saints. It's week one. They are a much better defensive unit. I think this is a great opportunity for the Saints defense to come out kind of swinging in week one. They were top 10 against opposing quarterbacks last year. I do think this might be a tough week one matchup for Bryce Young. Once again, at home for the Saints. This might be a team that's not necessarily out there on waiver wire, but if you are in maybe a smaller league and they're still floating around, I think they're a great play for week one. If this is a team that you drafted going into week one, you should absolutely be starting them. And like I said, I think the Panthers will be better this year offensively, but I don't quite know in week one if we're going to see that. The Saints are out there, absolutely worth the grab. They are a must-start defense in week one. All right, next up, we've got the Minnesota Vikings traveling to the New York Football Giants. The Vikings, another team, kind of surprising. I mean, top 15 in fantasy defenses last year, number 14 overall, 43 sacks, 21 forced fumbles, 10 fumble recoveries, 11 interceptions, 2 touchdowns. But just one of these teams you couldn't really trust. You got double digits 5 times out of them, then a lot of like mediocre 6-point, 8-point performances. But we kind of think about this team because the secondary was so bad last year as a bad defense, but their run defense was pretty good all throughout the season. And I think what we're looking at here, most importantly for this game, the Vikings traveling to the Giants, is this is a matchup that has the opportunities for turnovers because Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback for the Giants. As a matter of fact, I like the opportunity for Daniel Jones to throw interceptions so much that I would roll over to Underdog Fantasy and go ahead and take the over line on his interceptions for the day. It's set at 0.5. Pair that with your new mystery pick if you use promo code the catch to sign up down below, on top of getting a 50% deposit match up to $1,000 on Underdog when you use that promo code the catch. Promo link down below on the screen. On Underdog, get a free pick for week one, as well as going ahead and taking this easy line of Daniel Jones to throw a pick against the Vikings defense in week one, and go ahead and earn some free cash to buy some Taco Bell or Daniel Jones jersey, whatever you prefer. Promo code the catch on the screen down below. Let's get back into the defenses. And the rest of that Giants offense, just not that good. Like, I mean, I know the Vikings secondary is weak, but I think there's some upside hidden with guys like Randall Robinson and Darius Slayton, but I really think for the most part, this Viking secondary just needs to worry about Malik Neighbors and I guess stopping Devin Singletary. I don't really prefer to choose, teams that are traveling, but I think this is a good opportunity for the Vikings defense to come out with a nice stout performance. I don't see a ton of upside here, but the same time, maybe I do because Daniel Jones is playing quarterback and I expect at least 1 interception in this game out of Daniel Jones. So I do think you can make the argument here to flip things and potentially start the Giants defense at home against Sam Darnold in the Minnesota Vikings, but I personally like it the opposite way. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I do think there's opportunity here for both defenses, but I would roll with the Vikings if it were me. All right, next up, we've got the Bears coming in as the defense 18 last year, 30 sacks, 10 forced fumbles, 5 fumble recoveries, 22 interceptions, and 2 touchdowns. So the defense 18 on the year last year, a really tough defense to trust, but they had really good streaming value, double digits in weeks 5, 6, and 7 against poor offenses. And you also got double digits in week 12, weeks 14, and weeks 15 and 17. So one of these teams that was kind of up and down may have got you 0 points, 1 points, and then double digits 3 weeks in a row, then 0 points again. So a tough defense to trust, but I think once again, they've improved through the draft and through the offseason, and they're at home. I do like this matchup. Theoretically, maybe for both teams here, like you could argue the Titans defense that was awful last year faces rookie quarterback. I'm not going to trust that. Caleb Williams has looked great throughout the preseason, tons of weapons and improved offensive line. I'm not going there, but I've heard the argument elsewhere. I like the Bears at home. I think that this is going to be one of the better defensive units, more surprising defensive units throughout the season. And they're sitting at just 3% rostered on the Sleeper app right now. If you're in a deeper league, if you need a true streaming option, I think this is where you look. And don't get me wrong, I like the Titans, what they've done in the offseason. I like Will Levis to potentially have, a much improved year at quarterback with new weapons around him. Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd. We don't know at the moment if D-Hop's going to play, but we'll see. Then you got a new improved run game with Paul and then Spears coming into his sophomore season. Okay options at tight end with Chicken-Conquo. So I think the Titans could put up a decent offensive performance, but at the same time, Will Levis is still truly unproven to the NFL, in my opinion, and there is the opportunity for turnovers in this game. This one's a little bit risky because I do think that the Titans maybe bring some upside to the table, but at the same time, I like the Bears defense on paper right now. They're at home. There is opportunity for turnover here. I think they are a true streaming option where they just sit at 3% rostered at the moment. So if you need an option last minute, maybe you have like the Jets, don't want to start them against the Niners, something like that. I think that the Bears are okay going into week 1. All right, next up, we've got the Cleveland Browns. And originally, I wasn't going to really talk about like any top tier teams because the Browns probably got drafted in your league if you do play with defensive special team slots. But they're sitting at 7% rostered right now on the Sleeper app. And I think a big part of that is because they're facing a very good offense in the Dallas Cowboys this coming week. And yeah, I mean, right now the Cowboys kind of have this smear against them because like the CeeDee Lamb holdout and the Dak situation and like this organization feels like it's in shambles kind of. Brandon Cook's a little bit banged up, although he's probably going to play. Like, I don't know. They're just in a weird spot. But at the end of the day, it's not like the run offense for the Cowboys was great last year. They were still a top 5 team in terms of scoring last year. So even with the Frankenstein running back room with Zeke, Dowdle, and Dalvin Cook, I mean, everything else is returning here. Dak, Lamb, Cooks, Ferguson. So I definitely understand not wanting to start a team like the Browns against the Cowboys. But I think if you're in a position where you drafted the Browns and you don't have any better options to stream, the Browns are still at home here. They were the defense number 5 in fantasy last year, 49 sacks, 12 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, 18 interceptions, and 3 touchdowns. I still think that they are a startable team this week, uncertainly. So I wouldn't like freak out here, drop a skill position player, pick up even one of the teams we just talked about. I would just roll with the Browns. Like I think at worst you get like 8 points. At best you're going to get like 10 to 12 points unless the Cowboys are truly going to demolish themselves and we see it in week 1. So I'm not denying that the Cowboys are a tough opponent to face, but at least this is a home game for the Browns and this is still a very good Browns defense at the end of the day on paper. And like I said, top 5 in fantasy scoring last year. If you own them, don't freak out. You can still roll with them in week 1, and I think you will be just fine. All right, last but not least, we've got the Raiders at the Chargers. And this game overall has kind of emerged as like a favorite in terms of, a team or two that you can stream this week if you need a true streamer. Okay. Most people are actually going for the Chargers defense, which I don't think is crazy by any means because I think the logic here is you have noodle arm Gardner Minshew throwing the football. You still don't have a great offense on paper, I guess, but I just don't trust this Chargers defense at all. They were 21 overall last year in fantasy scoring, and when you really start to look at things, they had 15 against the Raiders in week 4, 30 against the Jets in week 9, 19 against New England in week 13. So definitely some streaming value. But other than that, they did not hit double digits once last year. And those were 3 very bad offenses we just named. So I know we talked about some teams today that are a little bit questionable, like the Seahawks and even the Bengals, but I just don't feel great about the Chargers here. I mean, I know they're at home. It's an okay play. You got a new head coach and Jim Harbaugh. Like, I can see it. Don't get me wrong. But I think when you kind of flip the script here, you look at the Raiders. This was the defense 8 last year in fantasy scoring: 46 sacks, 13 forced fumbles, 8 fumble recoveries, 13 picks, 5 touchdowns. They're on the road here. Justin Herbert's a little bit banged up. He's not going to be able to be very mobile. Brand new offense for the Chargers. It's going to be run heavy. You've got kind of Frankenstein room of wide receivers. Don't get me wrong. I like Palmer. I like Ladd. Don't really like Quentin Johnston. I think the running back situation is going to be really interesting here between Gus Bus, who I do like, Dobbins, and Vidal. So I don't know. I just kind of see a Chargers team that's kind of adjusting to a new offense. Herbert's been banged up throughout the offseason. And don't get me wrong, I don't think this Raiders defense is great by any stretch, but they gave you double digits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times last year. And then look at some of the teams they did against Green Bay, Detroit. We'll skip the Giants. We'll skip Minnesota late in the season. We'll skip the Chargers performance, although they did give you 29 points. And this is a very different Chargers team that they're facing here in week 1, but then Kansas City in week 16. So you have some teams in there that were great streaming options, the poorer teams, kind of similar to what we saw out of the Chargers. And then you have 3 teams that were very good offensively last year. But at the end of the day, this is a top 8 defense from last year that close to nobody is rostering right now, just 2%. I think there's a unique opportunity here when we're talking about streaming defenses. You have to kind of like think a little bit outside of the box at times. It's not always as clear cut and dry. So Chargers, okay, if you need a true streaming option, kind of reach out there. But I think in the same sense, the Raiders also definitely okay as a week 1 play if you have no better options. And that'll do it for today's video. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if you guys have any fantasy football questions, whatever it may be, drop them down below. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Let me know what defenses you guys are rolling with in week 1. And if you guys are new to the channel, you did enjoy the content, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out and join the Catch Fam community down below. With that, I will say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on the Catch.